I want to slip in a video here on Hebrew detective work. So this is a course in biblical Hebrew for the novice, and so that you didn't have to memorize all the different, languages are messy and they have all kinds of stuff like where did that come from, and irregular things like in English. Why is was the past tense of is? Why is am the form of it when you put an I in front of it? I am, he was, we were, he was. What's going on here? And of course, this can be very frustrating when you're learning a language for the first time. And so what we've done is we've used the tools in this course and in these videos and in my book, Biblical Hebrew for the Novice. We've used the tools of interlinearbible.org and Blue Letter Bible and so forth so that it tells you what the forms are. You don't have to have everything memorized because the tools will tell you what the forms are. So we've focused on what they mean. What do these forms mean in this course? But I just want to give you a taste of the kind of detective work, because some people love this, the detective work that's involved if you actually want to figure out what the forms are yourself. And I have a full course, Learning Hebrew Inductively through the book of Jonah, that's on Udemy for that. And maybe another one yet to come called Atomic Hebrew. We'll see if that happens. That goes into incredible detail. But we'll see what happens on that one. But for now, I want to give you a taste of the kind of detective work that happens when you're trying to figure out what these forms are. And maybe you're on an island and you don't have interlinearbible.org to tell you what the forms are. You just have your Hebrew Bible and you've got to figure it out yourself. Well, what kinds of things are involved in that? Well, first of all, I'm talking about verbs here in this video. The nice verbs are what we call the strong verbs, like the verb katal. Sounds like a strong verb, to kill. Again, I don't know why they picked this particular verb as the model verb in modern Hebrew grammatical discussions, other than the fact that it's a strong verb, meaning that all three of its letters do what they're supposed to do. The kof does what it's supposed to do, the tet does what it's supposed to do, the lamed does what it's supposed to do. And you'll know what I mean in a second, because there are other verbs called weak verbs that don't do what they're supposed to do. So we'll talk about them right now. So for example, in medieval times, for some reason, they chose pa'al as the paradigm verb. And the problem with choosing pa'al as a paradigm verb is the second letter, the ayin, is a guttural. It's a throat verb. It's a throat letter. And the problem with gutturals is they don't do stuff. It's not in my contract. I don't do doubling, for example. They're stubborn. And so like this particular form, pa'al, it should have a doubled ayin. This is what's called a D stem or a PL stem. We've learned about it in this series. And in the PL or D stem, this is supposed to double. The second letter is supposed to double. But ayins, I don't do doubling. It's not in my contract. So what happens, now the vowels haven't changed at all here. Sometimes this first vowel will say, well, I've got to pick up the slack for you, lazy ayin, and maybe you have what's called compensatory lengthening. In this case, nothing's done. It's virtual doubling, meaning nothing happens at all. But anyway, so gutturals can be a problem. They mess with the vowels. So gutturals tend to like A-class vowels, and so sometimes they mess up the vowels from the patterns that you want to know, what you learned and you wanted it to be. So on the whole, gutturals aren't that bad, but they can mess up some stuff. And so there are easiest of the weak verbs, but bad choice in the Middle Ages. I don't know. Go back and find that monk. Anyway, but pa'al is a weak verb because its second radical, these are called the first radical, the second radical, the third radical. Remember, Hebrew likes to have three basic letters as its core, at least in verbs. So this gutturals are a bit of a problem because of the vowels and because of the doubling. So our next contestant is what's called a ThirdHay verb. That's where the third radical is a hay. Now we saw this in or you will see this in the next lesson if you're following the book or following the series or following the course. This is from Genesis 1:3, Vayahi, and it means and it was. God said, "Let there be light," and light was, and it was, light was. So this is from the verb haya, and haya is first hay, second yod, and third hay. But the hay's gone away. What happened? It disappeared. And ThirdHay verbs, the third hay has a tendency of I running away. And then you're like, wait a minute. I know that this is Vav Patak. This is a converted imperfect. I know that this Yod is a third masculine singular performative, but that only leaves me with 2 core letters. What letter's missing? And thus the detective work. In this particular case, the hey has gone away. And so we have the first letter, we have the second letter, but the third hey letter's not there. And that happens with ThirdHay in this Vav consecutive or wow consecutive or consecutive imperfect or wayik tol imperfect or converted imperfect, whatever you want to call it, many names for it. It's a true past tense, a preterite. But in that situation, the third hey goes away. Why? It's just what they do. It wasn't a real hey anyway. It was a mother of reading, not a real hey. If it was a real hey, it'd have a dot in it, a mapik, saying, I'm a real hey. But third hey goes away. And there are other things. Sometimes when you have suffixes or suffirmatives on, a third hey verb, sometimes the hey will mysteriously be replaced with a yod. There's a reason, but we don't need to go into it. But this is part of the detective work. Third heys aren't too bad, but sometimes the hey goes away. So we have gutturals that mess up with the vowels and don't do doublings. We have heys, third heys that go away. So another weak verb is the first nun verb. And the problem is that nun assimilates when no vowel separates. So this, if this yagak, if it had been written out fully, it would have been yin gak. But what happened was the nun was right next to the gimel, and nun assimilates when no vowel separates and gets sucked into the gimel and becomes a doubled gimel. So this, again, the yod is the third masculine singular, the imperfect. I think this is something like he strikes or something, I think it's he gores. It's about an ox goring. It's in the next chapter, I think. But anyway, this is negak is the verb, but we only see 2 letters there. What happened? Which letter went away? Was it a third hey? Nope, it was a first nun, and nun assimilates when no vowel separates. Now getting a little more complicated, verbs that begin with a yod sometimes do some crazy things. And so, for example, here's a couple of the crazy things that verbs that begin with yod do. For example, in the imperfect, sometimes the yod becomes a wow. Wow, who knew they would do that? So, for example, this is from a verb, yashav, I think it means to sit or to dwell. And the yod tells you it's an imperfect third masculine singular, but all of a sudden, the yod has become a vav. That's because in the history of the Hebrew language, first yod verbs, some of them are genuinely first yod verbs historically, but some of them were, back in the past, first vav verbs. But if you remember, vav is now and. Whenever you see an and, a vav on the front of a word or wow on the front of a word, it's and almost always. And so for whatever reason, maybe that, verbs that began with a wow historically eventually started going by first yod. So this yoshev here is the participle, dwelling or sitting. And you can see that the yod of yashav has become a wow. Wow, who knew that? So first, one of the weird things that first yod verbs do. Here's another one. In the imperative, the first letter, the first yod sometimes gets chopped off. It gets beheaded, like John the Baptist. That's not funny, Ken. But anyway, so for example, this is yatzah, and hopefully my head's not in the way, because I know my head gets in the way sometimes. But this is yatzah, to go out. And notice that the yod's not there. It's been chopped off. This is an infinitive construct. It has a preposition to on the front, to go out, is what this means here. Latzeit. The tav is kind of like a ballast to hold. Let's hold that thing down. Don't let that fly away. That the infinitive construct sometimes does. But the verb is yatzah, and the first yod, it's gone. It's been taken away. It's got chopped off. And so first yod verbs, again, the code is going to tell you what it is. You don't have to figure this out. The cheats will tell you. But just as this is some of the Hebrew detective work that some people really, really love. Then there are verbs called hollow verbs. This is a middle week. So you have first week verbs where the first letter's weak, like first nun, first yod. You've got third week verbs like ThirdHay. And then you've got middle week, sometimes called hollow verbs. And they're called hollow verbs because sometimes that middle vowel just disappears. It becomes hollowed out. And so these are verbs that have either a yod or a wow, vav, in the middle. And so this is bo. It is bet wow, aleph. This is the masculine plural form with the eem on the end. It's a participle. It's in the next lesson, the final lesson. But anyway, the vav or wow, whatever you want to call it, has gone away. It's hollowed out. And that frequently happens with these middle weak verbs. The middle letter just disappears. It's like, where did it go? It's gone. Ba'im. So this is bo with a middle wow or middle vav, depending on how you prefer to say it. But it's gone away because it's been hollowed out. And so you have these two, you know what the ending is, eem, that's masculine plural. But you have ba, and you're like, where's the third letter? There's a third letter missing. Is it the first letter that's missing? Is it the third letter that's missing? No, in this case, it's the middle letter that's missing. It is a hollow verb. Finally, I want to end with what are called geminants. These are the twins. This is where the second and third consonant are the same. So savav, to surround. This is the participle sov, and you can see that it thought, well, why put both bets there? Let's just, or Beth, whatever you want to say the letter. Let's not do that. Let's just have one bet and be done with it. So this is like surrounding the participle, but you can see that one of the consonants has gone away, and it's the second bet that's gone away. So you've got first week, middle week, final week. These are weak verbs, and that's why katal was chosen as the model verb, because it's strong. Its letters don't go away. This has been a video on Hebrew detective work.